PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. Last Friday, I gave a broadcast exclusively for patrons of the channel. The theme was the biggest mistakes that amateurs make. And so I want to show you one of the games that I looked at in that broadcast. I think we can all learn from this. So I'll be giving another lecture exclusively for patrons this coming Friday, the 4th of April. If you want to join in, then do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess and enjoy the rewards. Check out what you get for your modest monthly contribution. I have to say, I really have enjoyed these broadcasts over the last couple of weeks. They're done over Zoom, so people have the opportunity to ask me questions directly. And there's been a really nice atmosphere. So thank you for everyone that's attended so far. On with this game. So the theme that I was discussing last Friday was basically king safety. And well, let's see how you get on with this game. So this is an amateur game. It was actually played in one of the ACO tournaments held on COS in 2023. I'm not going to give the names of the players. I think that's unfair. But there are some very typical mistakes here. So a slightly wacky start, but very quickly we transpose into a Vienna. And in fact, white plays the Vienna Gambit. Well, that's good fun. Why not? And black responds, I think, in the best way, d5, challenging the center. White takes, and knight takes e4. Well, this is an ancient position. And white played a very sensible move, knight f3 here. You can also play queen f3, and d3 is also possible and very wacky. But anyway, knight f3 is very sound. And knight c6. I mean, I won't go into detail into the theory of this, but just to say one thing, that in this position, it's pretty well known that black should play d4 in this kind of position. The point is to cut off this pawn from support of white pawns and pieces, and also to bring this king's bishop into play. So, for example, after pawn takes pawn, you can give a check. So black develops very quickly, and you can see this is actually a little bit uncomfortable for white. Black is ready to castle very quickly. White has to be careful about this queen giving some very nice check somewhere. Obviously not at the moment, but after the knights are exchanged. So yeah, I think d4 is a good move here. And black is, well, let's just say at least equal. But anyway, bishop e7, d4, bishop g4, bishop e2, and both sides castled. So, as I said, I think both players could have played a little bit more accurately in the opening phase. However, we've reached a very reasonable position for both sides, I think. It's black to play. So here's my first question for you. If you were playing black in this position, how would you play? Black to play. Tell you what, you have a little think. I'll have a little drink. Cheers. Black to play. Well, in this position, black played knight a5. Looking at some point to play that knight into this very nice outpost on c4. But as we're going to see, there are some problems with this move. Okay, let me flip it back. Oh no, I won't flip it back yet, actually. So I'm messing with your heads and switching from side to side. I think the best idea here is to play f6, challenging the spearhead. And I think black can get away with this because actually white's development so far is a little bit backward. So it's hard to exploit this move f6. So, for example, if white takes, I think you can see that black is absolutely fine there. There's no issues at all. And if white supports this, well, just queen d7, preparing perhaps to bring this rook across. I think black is very comfortable here. Pawn takes, rook takes. Okay, white can hit the outpost, but after some exchanges, and you can see that rook comes over, gaining time against the queen. Exchange. Now this bishop is quite strong, but if black exchanges it off with bishop f6 or bishop d6, I don't think black has any difficulties there at all. I mean, it looks about equal to me. So I think f6 is kind of the principal move in this position. Just flip it back. I think that black should be aware that this pawn chain potentially gives white the opportunity to attack on the king side. That's a beautiful spearhead. You know, this pawn on e5 controls these squares. And this pawn chain has carved out territory so that white, whoops, that was a misfire, white can operate potentially on these diagonals. And there's a lot of space on the king side that white can use. So I think knight a5 is actually quite a risky move. You might have also thought, well, maybe just queen d7. Actually, I mean, it looks very straightforward, quite good, but actually knight g5 is a good move. And let's say an exchange. And this is a little bit tricky. If h6, the knight comes back here, and you can see that queen can come out to h5. And, you know, white can use these nice diagonals and this space advantage that white has on the king side to generate an attack. This knight could also flip into play, looking at some very key squares in the position. So queen d7 isn't so great, actually. Oh, yes, and if that's exchanged off, that's extremely dangerous because, you know, this bishop can potentially anchor itself on f6 with, you know, could be a lethal attack. So that's why I think f6 is necessary in this position, or let's say desirable. And knight a5, you know, if black had all the time in the world and there were no queens on the board, I would say, yeah, knight a5 looks very reasonable to, you know, bring the knight here. But actually, this is really underestimating the opponent's attacking chances. Okay, so how does white proceed here? Well, for me, there's a very clear move, and that's queen e1. You know, if you want to attack your opponent's king, you transfer your queen over into the danger zone. And you can see these pawns act as a really nice cover for white's pieces. And black suddenly realised, well, this is quite tricky. You know, knight c4 looks very nice, but queen g3, actually that knight is just out of play. You know, it has no bearing on the king side. It can't transfer, because of that beautiful pawn on e5, it can't transfer back to the king side easily. So black decides to play bishop f5 in order to put the bishop on g6 to try and block out white's pieces. So bishop d3 played. Obviously that covers the pawn on c2. And if there's an exchange, you can see that knight is completely redundant on a5. So bishop g6, this was the idea, to kind of, you know, bolster the king side. Now I think the best move is queen g3, and white has quite an attractive initiative. Bishop f4, h4, you know, these kind of moves look quite nice. But white went for it straight away with e6, just putting the pressure on black. And it's an interesting move, and black has to react very carefully here. And again, I think black underestimated his opponent's attacking chances. He couldn't stand the tension and played f6. If this is taken, then this is indeed tremendous for white. I mean, this actually gives white an overwhelming attack. You know, when there's this bishop trained on h7 and the other pieces coming into play in combination with the queen, it looks tremendous for white. So what should black play? In fact, if black is very cool, queen d6 is actually quite a decent defense. So now there's pressure here, and if this is taken, rook takes, and black is actually all right there. I mean, the knight looks very impressive on e5, but in fact, you can see that black has pretty good connection, and black is going to be all right there. Okay, let's go back. But instead, f6 was played, and after knight h4, putting pressure on the bishop here, this is tremendous for white. So black exchanged on d3. Now the knight wants to come to f5, which looks absolutely tremendous. So g6 played. Well, it's hard to find a good idea for black here, but queen g3 is really nasty with simple threat of knight takes g6. And if bishop d6, then the queen just nudges up. This bishop is coming here. Whoops, and misfired again. And this is just a tremendous position for white. And there's a nice finish here, actually. I should say that black played queen d6 here. But what about king g7? Okay, here's time for another think and drink moment. I'll have the drink. Cheers, my nice cup of morning tea. And you have a think. How should white play here? There's certainly more than one way to play. There are lots of good moves. I mean, you can throw the knight into f5 check with a lovely attack. But bishop h6 is absolutely crushing. Obviously, if the king steps back, you can take here. And if this is taken, then knight f5 check. Oh, this is glorious. Pawn takes rook f4, threatening here. And well, you can put the queen in the way, but I mean, this is obviously winning for white. I mean, you can just play rook f1, but queen g7 is really juicy. Threatening the bishop, and after this, then rook f1, and that king is not returning to base. Well, only in a box anyway. Let's go back. After queen g3, black is lost. Queen d6 played. Bishop f4. Queen takes pawn. And now white's pieces just flooded in. I mean, this adds insult to injury. Of course, knight g6 is winning straight away, but this is even nastier, bringing the final piece into the attack. The queen step back, and knight f5, really simple, threatening the bishop and threatening knight h6, so understandably black resigned. I mean, that happened so quickly and so easily. But yeah, this was really my main theme of my lecture, which, yeah, underestimating your opponent's attacking chances. And I think coming right back here, I think it's important to recognise that this kind of pawn chain potentially gives white a really strong attack, and this has to be dealt with very quickly. And then knight a5 is, yeah, I mean, I suspect that queen e1 was overlooked, and just how powerful this was. And then here, this was a case where black couldn't stand the tension and wanted to play f6 to have some kind of clarity. But here is where one had to think very carefully, and queen d6 was the only defense. There you go. As I said, if you would like to join the next broadcast exclusively for patrons, then do sign up to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. I'll put the link down in the comments and the video description. And they're really good fun. They've been very nice events so far. Hopefully see you there.